Buenos días todos ustedes. Me llamo Tomaso Giamo y bienvenido a mi programa. Welcome, everyone. I'm Tom Kaczynski. Welcome to today's show. Today's date is, looks like November 16th, 2023. Glad to see you all. And just going to throw some more thoughts out there. If you want to share the show with friends, please do so. I think the algorithm is already starting to throttle me. Kind of an interesting thing, considering I'm only literally reaching 44 people. They're so scared of what I'll say. I guess they don't know because I don't know, and we'll just figure it out together. If you want to support the program, the Venmo CVC PRV, the books are over on Amazon, and you guys know the rest. I'll put it in the description, as Dana always reminds me to do, and she's right about that. So I'm going to jump around a little bit today, but I wanted to start today with a trap. And I've noticed this trap quite a bit as we've watched things play out with this situation between Gaza and Israel. And people don't want to take a side in the thing, and I understand that, an America First logic side, right? But the thing is, you have to think in foreign affairs what's in your long-term interest. And if we've seen anything by the recent hubbub, where half of TikTok is celebrating Osama bin Laden for his letters about why the war against America, the war on terror, had participants on the other side, what we realize is that there are a couple billion pissed off people in the Muslim world about the Israeli state existing and what it's doing between there. So those people were causing huge problems in Europe before World War II and in the Middle East after World War II. And whatever you think about all that, do keep this in mind, that when we are basically subordinated to a support structure for them, and if you don't believe that, just go watch Nikki Haley or Nimrata Rahaya, however you say her name. I don't remember it, but certainly the name she doesn't dare run under. What you would find very quickly is that there is a lot of anger and frustration about basically the fact that the Arabs who live in those states are kept in the equivalent of concentration camps. And while the Arab governments, like most governments, don't care particularly much about their people, the people themselves on the Arab street are rather pissed off about it, and that does lead to problems from time to time. And I certainly think that's a big issue. Now, Hamas may not get the support they want because Iran said, you didn't tell us, so we're not going to get into your mess. And maybe that's a good thing. We'll see if Israel goes into Hezbollah, what happens in southern Lebanon and the problems up there. But what it does mean is that there is this ongoing issue that's out there. And the thing that's interesting is when you look at it worldwide and you ask who are supporting the Zionists, well, there's only one group that's really hard. Well, I should say that. There's three groups that are hard behind them. The media, because who owns it, right? Number two, the governments, because who owns them, right? Same reason. And of course, the banks are caught up in all that. But the third group, and the most baffling of them, and we're going to go back to this because it's a personal affront to me, is the Christian evangelicals. And they do this because of bad theology. If you ever doubt that theology matters, take this as case in point, that between dispensationalism, rapturism, the idea that we're going to have, some carve out, for Jews who don't believe in Jesus. That's crazy, but it causes another problem. And this is the interesting part for those of you who've been following along with your Book of Revelation bingo card. That if, in fact, the world turns on Israel, which seems to be the case in the street worldwide, because who wants to watch kids getting blown up in hospitals? I've shared some of this on my Twitter feed because, you should know what's going on out there. We can't pretend to look the other way in this world. At Tom Kaczynski, by the way, if you're curious. What is happening is these people, because of bad theology, are going to discredit themselves, and they're going to discredit their whole belief structure, where by the end of this, people will be shamed to be a Christian of Protestant persuasion outside of the namby-pamby mainline kind of churches, like the Church of England literally now is looking at doing the gay priest thing, which is just astounding, and yet that's where we are in the story. So I would warn those of you out there who are paying close attention to this to be careful, because what I see forming is a trap. And for those of you who haven't been, caught up in social media sphere, that's fine. Yesterday was a very entertaining day for if you've been on the internet in dissident circles for a while, because the Candace Owens-Ben Shapiro fight led to the Tucker Carlson episode, where basically they said, okay, the reason people aren't happy about Israel is because the same people who are pushing for Israel, who are saying we need to stand up and defend borders and defend ethnicities, are the same people who've been pushing the white privilege crap for years. And it's the same funders, by the way. It's the same exact crap. And weird things are happening. Like you had Free Palestine protesters in D.C., where they're probably on friendly terms with the police. They're allowed to run roughshod while, other people protesting is called an insurrection. A massively overused word by any stretch of the imagination. Yet there was pushback against them, heavy pushback, because now they're threatening the financial sector. They're threatening the fact that, Zionism has been incredibly powerful in the West a very, very long time. And it's something where we are now seeing a strange realignment. But in a lot of ways, you saw that march to stand with Israel. And the reason why is there's a lot of evangelicals who think they're fulfilling biblical prophecy. And there's a lot of evangelicals who listen to their pastors, don't read their Bible, and fail to realize the third temple they're looking for is already here. His name was Jesus. The book of John makes it clear as anything if you've actually studied this for more than 10 minutes on your own. But they haven't read the Bible, because most people who claim to be Christians, and I can't speak for other faiths, although I suspect this is a common human trait, adopt the name of something without an actual understanding of the doctrines. When I studied Christianity, and in as much as I do pastoral work, I come with the perspective of an outsider, where I read the Word, and I read the Word anew. And I recommend that to everyone, by the way. Even if you're not a Christian, you should familiarize yourself with the Gospel, so at least you know what was said and what wasn't said. But what I would say in addition to that is that now you see all these Zionist-supporting Christians are getting themselves knee-deep in this. And if everyone turns on Israel, they're going to be asked, who supported these people? And you might see the same people who theoretically should be seeking to get closest to God, and this is the tricky part of it about the deception, might be the ones who end up being targeted because they supported literally the opposite of that, with the Remphan star and all that stuff. So it's just it's a really curious thing that people will have to keep a really, really close eye on going forward. And it just struck me that it's the perfect sort of inversion of turning people who are trying to get close to God, but who are misled into making a huge mistake. And then what's left? You look at the organizational, institutional churches, you look at the idea of how you're seeing the blending of a lot of different beliefs in pantheism. And to me, that's the fulfillment of Revelation in a lot of ways. There's the people who actually hold to the faith, if this is the end, are going to be so small. And so many people are misled, and I don't know the solution to that other than to encourage you to know that on your own and to do your own studies and to not trust any authority, above Jesus or the Bible for that matter. That would just be folly in my mind. So another thing I wanted to talk about that I was going to mention the other day is if I know some of you, because I've talked to you about it, have an interest in gifted and talented education programs. The stories about the GATE programs and those weird flip cards and the things that we went through as kids. I did as well. I was pulled out in Arizona where I went. It was called the SAGE program. And I decided in a spat of boredom to check on my old school district, the Deer Valley Unified School District. And, it's interesting. They have their own GATE program, still called SAGE, but now they're teaching the kids Mandarin Chinese. And I was thinking, that's an interesting choice. Why are they learning Chinese? Are they getting ready like they are in San Francisco to bow down to the Emperor of China? I don't know. But I thought it was a really curious thing that these are the things that are being taught right now in our schools for our high-end students. And I was actually pleased because I wasn't sure if they'd still have a spot for high-end students because, if you don't fit the picture, you don't get hired. And that's something I think that's at the heart of this story, too, in a lot of ways, that even the gifted and talented are floating around out here while mediocrity is promoted. And maybe to go back to the Bin Laden letter, people are getting in a tizzy about the fact that kids on TikTok are looking at this with new eyes and saying the guy had a point because he called out finance. He called out that, Americans are not living a better life. And how can we say that? Old folks complain, well, they waste their kids' inheritance because, that's what they do. But what we see is inflation is just made home ownership untenable. Social apps have made dating untenable. I mean, the horror stories I hear, I'm grateful I just missed it, being an Xer. I mean, maybe it really was true. What was it? They say 2007, whenever those smartphones all came out, was a real terrible year. I don't know. But I do know that there's a lot of frustration, and I read these stories, because we all read them on the internet. We all read stupid things, and I'm reading all these posts from Reddit where you see these teachers, these millennial teachers, complaining to their Zoomer students, why aren't you upset about the things we're upset about? Because, the millennials grew up begging for parents to be there, and so they're craven to every authority figure, but the the Z generation, the Zoomers, grew up on technology, and they're the complete nihilists because they grew up on their own. They grew up near feral, and there's certain lacks of empathy that come from that, a certain individual expressiveness, but also they can see their future is going to be worse, and that some massive reset is going to be needed, and some set of order is going to have to come forward. And I think that's where we are in the story, that there is the desire for the imposition of a new order, and what that will be is where we see the maneuvering. I mean, one thing we aren't talking enough about is digital currencies getting propped up everywhere. I read Kenya's going online with one of them. The Europeans are coming forward with their own. Something in Korea I was reading about it, and other countries suggesting it. I mean, hey, I'm watching Argentina this weekend. We've got the election, Massa versus Milei. Hopefully Milei wins by my perspective, but hey, I don't know what's going to happen, but we've got, that election on Sunday, and you can bet I'll be watching that with commentary. You'll have to hear about it, because like I always say, the brilliant thing about Argentina is that because their money's broken, they find other ways to get things done, and it's something that we need to watch for here. While we're doing this, the World Economic Forum just concluded a 3-day meeting on cybersecurity. That there was no press, no reporting of what they talked about. But, when you look at things like Agenda 2025 and the various efforts to, like Nikki Haley said, to take away your individual security through an anonymity, it's clear that the near future envisions a world where travel is difficult, where you are trapped under a surveillance regime globally. And it seems like a lot of the fighting now is over who's going to manage that. Will it be privately run? Will it be state run? Will there be hard borders in that? I don't know. And these other issues maybe will be solved before then. Maybe Ukraine, maybe they'll have the coup that a lot of people are hinting at. Their defense minister, there's Zelensky. A lot of people think he's going to displace Zelensky. And now the Wall Street Journal is running pieces saying maybe it's time that we come to peace there, which means America's done with this. And the deal they're going to make is, the new Congress. You watch that new speaker. I never trust some guy who comes from nowhere. And the more I learn about this Mike Johnson, the less I like him. He's kind of like a pinheady Stephen Colbert type. The more I see him, and I want to believe something good would happen, but the first thing he did, like all of them, was to rush to go bend his knee over to Zion, and that's the truth of it. And I think Americans have the right to ask who represents us at this point, and nobody does. And I would include either the candidates. Biden's terrible, and look at Trump. I mean, look how Kushner ran that administration. You might not like me saying that, but that's the truth. We all witnessed it, and some of us are honest enough to remember it. But I would say if you want a little bit of entertainment, watching Shapiro and Candace Owens was pretty entertaining. Or not Shapiro, well, yes, that part of it. Watching her on Tucker, was quite entertaining. And as far as what's coming down the pike, I think that something radical will have to change sooner rather than later, because we've reached the point where, at least during COVID, when people pretended to work, they could get by well enough because the government filled some of the gaps. And you can say that ran up debt and caused inflation, but now people are working more and getting less, especially people in the middle bottom, and they are angry and they're ready for something else. And the lines are all mixed up again, right? Because people who are opposing and supporting things, you have the old horseshoe theory is actually coming to fruition. You have people on the far right and the far left agreeing that basically American foreign policy is doing nothing to help America. It's causing a great loss of money. Some few people in the military-industrial complex are benefiting, like example, Nikki Haley, perfect example of that. But you see, for the most part, this is not something that provides security. It's not something that people want. I mean, people in America just want to be able to go buy their groceries, be left alone. That's what they want, and that's not good enough, but that's what they want. And they can't even get that anymore. Instead, we are stuck at this edge of frustration where, at some point you feel like the stage is being set for a pseudo-messianic figure to come in here. And I hope it doesn't, because, people will fall for it, because they always do. But in the meantime, what can we do? We can plan to separate ourselves somewhat. I think I've had the pleasure, actually, I should say, in the last week or so, offering some guidance, mentorship, hopefully some ideas to some people in this community and beyond. And, being able to help one another. I mean, even if you just have someone to talk to. This is an authentic Christian community of dissidents who realize the world is going the wrong direction. We try to help each other. I'm always accessible. I try to make time for people where I can, because it is tough and things are tight. Things are tight financially, socially. People feel isolated. Technology doesn't really help with that. And it's something that is quite sad. And I wish we could do things better. Instead, we have what was it? Robert Anton Wilson had a great phrase where he said, "We fight one another over biosurvival tickets." That's what he called money, and I think it's a great way to describe it. He's got some crazy ideas, and Lord knows he plays with some darkness as well. But, I mean, that's where we are. And in the meantime, I continue to read my books on Iran. I got a good one on Lebanon coming. So to make sure I have the full depth of what we will need to know for the days ahead, and just an encouragement for you to continue gathering and collecting with people who are thinking about the right sorts of questions coming down the line. We still have the problem of automation moving forward faster and faster, AI's ability to do more and more, and what the post-human future these people want look like. And if we can disrupt it, it's an interesting dynamic that as time goes by, the crazier dissidents, people look at like the writings of Ted, or they're looking like on TikTok at the writings of UBL, and they're looking at this and being like, wait a minute, at least this is connected to reality, whereas we've had empty jingoistic propaganda for years, and the media is used to just spoon-feeding it to people, but the problem is, these generations that have grown up, they're just disconnected. They've been living in the real world. I mean, I see that in the MTV sense of it. They've been living in a world of reality TV where there is no common culture, no common belief anymore. There's just, interactions and, cohabitation at best. And beneath that, a well of frustration, and I have to believe a desire for something more, And at some point, people will latch on to that. And I think it will be a post-democratic age for sure. I mean, whatever sort of nominal things are carried out, the reality is we've been living under a security state. All the information that's come out about the various efforts of the FBI related to the Trump administration, or, use the court case in New York, for instance, where basically DAs are getting elected promising to be political prosecutors. I mean, who would have thought running as Beria would be a winning ticket, Be like, yeah, like Himmler, but tougher. That's where we are in this. And I don't know. I mean, the wife has been telling me, Dana thinks I should do an annotated version of the coming Civil War to reassess where we are and what happened. I think it's a good idea. I mean, I just don't like going back over old work. But I tell you, if I looked at it, what I would say is the group dynamics are a little bit trickier than I thought. And really, it's going to be between the state surveillance types and the people who want to be sort of radically free. But the radically free people have the contradiction that they're going to have to somehow come to work together. And it's hard in a low-trust environment where there's a lot of tricks to trap them up, or a lot of traps to trick them up, however you want to put that. So those are things that I am concerned about as we come into the holiday season. I do think it will be a lousy season for retailers. I expect two things we're going to see. Coming out of this are a lot of job layoffs, especially into the new year. And at some point, you wonder if the energy costs are going to spike. They haven't thus far, but when you look at the potential of a wider war in the Middle East, I don't know. Now, it does seem like the Chinese do want to get back to business, at least somewhat. And so that should at least give a degree of calmness to the idea of a larger war. It doesn't look like Taiwan's going to pop off right away, but hey, they practice strategic deception, as do we. But it seems like, has been for the case for a long time, that Iran is going to be the target of the intermediate war. And if America gets itself caught up in yet another land war in the Middle East, I think not only will it lose that war, but it will probably serve a long way towards bringing Islam together into closer focus and bring the Mackinder heartland much closer together than we've seen in a very long time. But we'll see how that all plays out. I'm not sure how it's going to act out yet. In the meantime, keeping an eye on Spain and seeing what happens there. It's calmed down a little bit. Poland just had their Independence Day celebrations. A lot of frustration with what's happening in Ukraine over there. and various hotspots around the world. But for the moment, things are a little bit calmer, so it's a good time to think and reflect who we give power to and what that means. I do believe at some point we need to begin articulating dissident geopolitics. How can we build communities based on the affiliations we actually want, our faith, our families, our hobbies, our locations, and not these nations and ideologies that are designed to be dehumanizing. And then how can you disempower those structures over you? And at some point, you have to conclude that, the state is the monopoly on violence. It's what it's always been. It's what it will always be. Sometimes it will outsource some of it to corporations, and that gets messier. But ultimately, much like it was before the 30 Years' War, people will be needing to organize where they can provide at least collective self-defense and some degree of internal sovereignty. And that's hard because we're used to thinking of people as individuals. But at this point, it's time for people to start thinking about clanning up. Hopefully you enjoy being a part of this clan, of listening to this program. It's a legacy program I do for people who like to listen. If it's a blessing to you, you want to support the program, CVC PRV is the Venmo, and P.O. Box 343, Eagle Lake, Maine, 04739 is where you can send something if you want. Comments, always put in here. I look at them. If you see at actual Tom Kaczynski, that's me also. It's just easier because I keep the accounts separated because when they killed my other account, what happened was we lost all of our videos and playlists. And while YouTube certainly deletes enough stuff, I really don't want to make Dana have to go through that again. I promised her I wouldn't. And we know that we're on a ticking time clock here because I say things I'm not supposed to say. Why else would you be listening, right? So I'll just say, Heavenly Father, a blessing upon everyone listening today. I just pray that you give them the wisdom to see past these deceptions and to follow your will in all things. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen. God bless. Have a great day.